So I watched Tinkerbell recently, and I've been watching a lot of video essay creators, specifically ones reviewing like media, such as like movies and TV shows, and I love that stuff. So I really wanted to keep doing it because I sort of dabbled in it with the Candace video and the Rigby, I don't know why I said Rigby first, Mordecai and Rigby videos, but you know, I haven't really deep dived or done like a full movie or show synopsis yet. I want to do a show next week, so hang in there. One that I've been watching for years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm gonna do Tinkerbell today, which I think I've mentioned once already, and I'm gonna start by telling you about the loaded cast. And I had watched this movie when I was younger with my family, and I don't know if I just didn't pick up on the cast, or if I at that time, or if I just completely forgot because it had been such a long time. This movie came out in September of 2008, which is really interesting because I was 6. So that probably means I did not pick up on the what's it called? The casting of this, or who I was watching. But let me tell you, Tinkerbell is voiced by Mae Whitman. Who is Mae Whitman, you may ask? Katara. Mae Whitman voices Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. She also voices Amity from The Owl House and Rose from American Dragon. She's in a lot of other things. The Duff, Good Girls. She made a guest appearance in Arrested Development. She was a recurring character in the later seasons, I think. But she's in so many different things, and I think she's throughout all of my childhood, she's sprinkled in through all of my different things I used to watch, which is so interesting to think about because Avatar: The Last Airbender was one of my favorite shows, and then to hear her voice in everything else that I really liked was kind of interesting, not in a bad way at all. I really liked her, so yeah, crazy, right? Iridessa, right, the sunflower, sorry, is voiced by Raven Simone. Silvermiss is voiced by Lucy Liu. Are you kidding me? Why did they put together such a powerful squad to make a children's movie? And I know that's a big thing that they like to do, but it's just so interesting. Rosetta was voiced by Kristen Chenoweth. This cast is so stacked. So stacked. So the movie starts with the narrator reading or reciting a poem and basically introducing the concept of fairies. And she says that every time a baby laughs, a fairy is born. And as she says this, we follow a baby laughing, which leads to I think it's a dandelion seed flying, floating through the wind to a place. And then the narrator breaks into a song, which kind of gives Polar Express vibes when she stops vocalizing. She'll stop singing and it's just got instrumental at the end, and it reminds me a lot of the Polar Express, which is so interesting. And I don't know anything about musical scores, but I just noticed that, and that was weird to me. Anyways, so the dandelion seed flies through the air and gets to a certain spot on a tree, which you can tell it's a special tree by looking at it. Just, it's got fairy dust coming out of it and all that. It's a special tree, and it's huge, and it's in the center of it's a special tree. You just look at it and it's a special tree. Anyways, so the dandelion lands at a specific spot, and all the fairies gather, and they pour the stardust, the fairy dust guy. We don't know his name yet, but he takes some dust and he pours it over the dandelion seed, and the dandelion seed turns into a fairy, a wingless fairy. who is wearing a white dress because the dandelion seed is white, and it's very cool, and I find that very interesting. So the first name that comes up is Queen Clarion, and she is exactly what she sounds like. She's the queen of the fairies, and she is basically just like kind of overseeing the ceremony, or like the birth of this new fairy. And so she welcomes the fairy to Pixie Hollow and gives her wings. And then she has some fairies set out a couple of items on toadstools, or, I think they're toadstools. I don't really know what toadstools are. But she has fairies set things out on these little mushrooms, these like flat, or I don't know if it might be wood shaped like mushrooms, but it's not really all that important. She has people like putting things on these like little items, differing items on these little platforms, and then she says to this new fairy, choose one. And she's like, how am I supposed to know which one I'm supposed to choose? And she's like, oh, you'll know. And I think that is the most frustrating answer you can give someone. Just be like, just tell her what happens or something. I don't know. I mean, maybe that gives away the mystery or whatever. But like, I don't know. That's such a weird, I don't like that response. And she uses it multiple times in the movie. Anyways, so she first goes to pick up a water droplet, and this water droplet bursts in her hands. Then she goes to like pick up this really mini tornado, which is really, really cool, and that also bursts. And then she's just like, she's kind of aimlessly walking. She walks past not aimlessly, she's like looking for the next thing that she should try. Then she walks past a hammer, and it starts to levitate, and it starts glowing and like moving toward her, and everybody starts like gasping, and they're like and then she's like, what's happening? So she turns around and she sees this hammer, and she reaches out for it, and it starts glowing brighter when she holds it, and then she's almost blinded, like she has to turn away. Anyway, so she grabs it, and it glows brighter, and then it stops glowing, and they're all celebrating. And then the Queen Clarion goes, oh, so she's a tinker. This is Tinkerbell, everyone. One of the water fairies goes over to her friends, and she says that no object has glowed that much, not even for Vidya. And Vidya hears this, and she's like, huh. So Tinkerbell is introduced to Clink and Bobble, who are also tinker fairies, and they show her around the entire of like the fairy realm, I guess. I don't exactly know what the extent of where they are, like how far it reaches, but they show her around. They show her to like they show her where all the other fairies live, so like the water fairies and like the nature fairies and the fast flyers, I think, and like all that. They just show her all around and blah blah blah. And then they have this moment where they show her to where they live, and she's like, wow. And it's like one of those moments where they're like, uh-huh, and then they look at her, and and then they point her head down, and it's like, no, not there, and she's like, oh. I mean, she doesn't say that, but the music, the tone change in the movie, it makes it so obvious that she does not like it. It's like a whole switch up, and the record, it was like almost a record scratch. It was too funny. They call it Tinker's Nook, and Tinker's Nook is actually kind of really cute. So they go in there and they start exploring, and she loves it. She's like, whoa, this is so cool. What in the world? Like, you guys are making these things, and like, what is all this and what's all that? And so she doesn't look like Tinkerbell, mind you. She still doesn't look like Tinkerbell. She's still wearing that white dress. So they show her around, and then they finally bring her to her house that they've made for her. This is like a really funny part to me. When they get inside, they're like, oh, we made you clothes, but we didn't know your size, so they might be a little big, but that's because you're just so tiny. And literally this entire time and after, I was just noticing how the average size of all the fairies, not to say that you should cater to the average size, that's like part of the problem that we have now, but it's like the average size of all of the fairies that live in this place are like, it's literally the average size is the same as what Tinkerbell is. So I'm really confused as to why they said that she's so tiny when she's kind of average. I feel that's strange. I feel like they didn't have to explain why the clothes were big, because she could have come out any size. She could have. Like, Clink is a big guy. He's buff. You know what I'm saying? And Tink she could have been buff too. She could have done it. But it just so happened that she wasn't. They didn't have to explain. It was just a funny detail to me, honestly. So they leave her alone to get situated in her house, and she tries on one of her little the clothing items that they made her, and it's very oversized, but it's also very shapeless. And so she finds a pair of scissors and she's like, oh, let me get to work. So she starts, and then it cuts away to Clank and Bobble arguing, and Clank is saying something like, you're so frustrating, sometimes you can be pretty. And then Tinkerbell comes out of nowhere, and he looks at her and he's like, pretty. And I don't know how I feel about that. And like, it happens in a lot of like kids shows, and I feel strange. I find anything romantic in kids shows to be a weird and unnecessary detail. So it just occurred to me that I actually have been saying Clank is Bobble and Bobble is Clank, which hasn't mattered in the section before, but Bobble was actually the one saying like the pretty thing. And there was a little other extra detail that I forgot that I wanted to mention, which is that when Bobble saw Tinkerbell for the first time in her new clothes that she fashioned, he was saying like the pretty thing, right? But then he wears like goggles, like glasses, and literally the lenses popped, okay? And these lenses are water, is what I realized, because he gets out some eye drop thing and he just remakes them. And that raises a lot of questions, because like, is the water in that vial like medicated? Does it have special properties? Also, if you lean too far back, which I guess the question is already answered because he had to lean back to like drop it in his eye, or in the goggles. But the goggles didn't seem to have like a glass or plastic like backing so that it could hold the water or anything from going into his eye. I don't know. I just have a couple questions. You know what? It's a movie for kids, so I don't need to go that far into it. But it is a little bit of a quirky detail. Anyways, moving on. All right, so this is where Bobble and Clank introduce Tink to the supervisor fairy, which is Fairy Mary, and they go to deliver supplies to other fairies in a wagon pulled by Cheese, who is a mouse. Something moving in the grass startles them, but they don't go fast until they find out what it is, which is such an interesting thought, because as soon as I am in a dark spot or a part where I don't know what could jump out at me, I am bolting. I am running. I haven't exercised in months, but I'm starting right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna wait to find out what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, as soon as I turn off the light in the basement, I'm running up those stairs. You know what I'm saying? Like, that sort of thing. So, I mean, I don't understand it, but for suspense and everything. So, they find out that it's the sprinting thistles, which are apparently a big problem. They pick up the pace, and these sprinting thistles are dangerous, okay? Because, like, they are running past really fast, number one. And they are apparently they're really, like, sharp. The fibers on them or something. So when they run past Clank, he like actually like he like yelps because he's in pain, and I'm like, ooh, and it makes a ripping sound, so it just ripped some of his skin. And so they start bolting out of there. I mean, well, Cheese starts bolting out of there. Also Clank, because he's on foot, because they don't have a wheel. They have like a missing wheel on the what's it called? On the wagon. They end up hitting into a tree, and like straight up just like everything goes everywhere, and they're like, their already broken wagon kind of breaks down a little more. But it's still usable, which it's a pretty good cart. This is the point when Fawn, Silver Mist, Rosetta, and Iridessa are introduced. And they all see that they have like, they pretty much ran into the tree, and they're like, what happened? And they're all like, it was sprinting thistles, and they all gasp, and they're like, oh my gosh, those things are blah 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 blah, and they're so this is a known problem. Like, everybody knows about this problem. So Silver Mist and Iridessa make a rainbow out of something that Bobble gives them, and Tinkerbell's like, whoa, and she says she coins the phrase flutterific, which I had to note because I thought that was very interesting. After that, Clink and Bobble I think they're ready to either deliver something else or head home. I think they're going to deliver something else. And Tinkerbell's like, oh, can I meet you guys later or whatever? And then she goes off on her own, and she meets Vidya, and she has an attitude, which is never a problem. But when you direct it at someone you don't know because you think they might be better than you, that's a problem. That's a weird thing to do, especially when they're younger than you. That's weird. Anyways, I really don't know how age works in this fairy thing, because she was just born like quite literally yesterday, but she looks the same age as all of the other fairies. So I don't know exactly how that works, but it is. Anyway, so Tinkerbell is like, so what do you do? And Vidya's like, what do you think I do? And then Tinkerbell is like, well, her voice doesn't sound like that. Vidya famously has a very, very smoky voice, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous, okay? And I'm gonna say it. It's she's maybe my favorite voice in the whole Tinkerbell series. Honestly, she's always been one of my favorite characters. She is a mean person in the first one, and I think later she gets nicer or something like that. She at least becomes friends with them or something, because people liked her so much. I think that's why they did it. But I've always liked her because I was like, I like a Shigo character. I do. And she's like she's like Shigo but purple. Okay? Anyways, so sorry. I keep getting off track, and you know what? That's okay, but let's try not to. Where was I? So Tinkerbell's like, what do you do? And Vidya's like, what do you think I do? And Tinkerbell's like, are you like a pollinator, a pollen spreader, pollen picker? And that, I don't know what they were trying to say with that, but it was weird. I honestly don't know if that was supposed to have any implications at all, but that was weird, I think. I don't know. I don't want to imply anything, but I'm just gonna point it out and let you think about it, because it was just weird. It was weird, and it was emphasized, and I was like, what the heck? Anyways, so Vidya gets upset as she's saying this, and she's like, no, I'm a fast flyer, and I do all this stuff, and I'm amazing, and actually I brought you here, and on the winds, and blah 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 blah. And Tinkerbell and Vidya's like, everyone relies on me, and blah 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 blah. And Tinkerbell's like, oh wow, that's kind of like what I do. And Vidya's like, what? And then she goes on to say that I work in the sky, you work down in a ditch. And Tinkerbell's like, what? And so Tinkerbell is like, she's like, to a degree, she's naive, but at this point she finally realizes that Vidya is not her friend, and she's not going to become her friend at this point. And Tinkerbell's like, ugh, you know what? I'm gonna show you. I'll show everybody when I go to the mainland. And Vidya's like, what did you say? She like smirks a little bit. She's like, what? And Tinkerbell's like, you heard me, the mainland. When I go to the mainland, blah, 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 blah. And then Vidya's like, that, I can't wait, or whatever. And so they part ways, and Tinkerbell, she goes off, and she's like flying really angrily, about to go back home, I guess. And she's like, oh, stupid Vidya, blah, 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 I'll show her. And then she stumbles across this, like, clearing with, like, a bunch of random stuff, and she's like, what is this? And she finds this coin that's got, like, a really funky lady on it. And I think it's supposed to be, like, nobility, because she's dressed like a queen or something. So Tinkerbell finds these lost things, and it's like, I think she finds at first, like, first the coin. I'm trying to think of everything that was there. She finds a spring, like a little, like one that you'd find in a pen, but, like, shorter. She finds a little, like, I think it's a plastic diamond. She finds a bunch of little things, and she also I think she puts it all on the coin. I think that's what it was. So she like tries and fits it all on the coin, and she gets it all up in the air, and she flies it home. And when she gets there, she shows Clank and Bobble, and they're like, oh, it's lost things, cool. And then Mary shows up, and she takes them. She takes the lost things away, and she tells Tinkerbell that she needs to prepare for the Queen's review. Well, not that Tinkerbell, like, specifically, but them as Tinkers need to prepare for the Queen's review. When Mary leaves, Tink is like, what is the Queen's review? And I think I don't know if it was Bobble or Clank. They were like, well, it's when people show the Queen what they can do and how ready they are for spring or whatever, and blah, 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 blah. And Tink hears this, and she's like, oh, this is my chance. So she gets to work, and there's, like, this montage of her being in, like, this little workroom. I think it starts off at night. It's like a dark space with a bunch of lamps on these little things, these workstations, and they're all, like, all the workstations are full at the beginning of the montage, and by the end of it, she's the last one working, just to show you how much of a hard-working queen she is. The Queen arrives at the place where the Queen's review is happening, and everyone is, like, trying to get their last things together. Tinkerbell goes and interrupts the Queen as she's doing this check-in, and people, like, someone's gonna stop her, but the Queen's like, oh, it's okay. And she shows this invention where she's like trying to crack an acorn, and she, like, it's not working properly, and it launches the nut into a crowd of people, and they all move aside, and it hits a baby squirrel. And she's like, oops, let me show you the next one. Tinkerbell is still, like, talking about her inventions and saying, like, she can help when she goes to the mainland. And at this point, Queen Clarion is like, what? And then Tinkerbell's, like, still going because she doesn't realize that there's anything weird. And then Queen Clarion is like, has no one told you? And then Tinkerbell goes, told me what? And Queen Clarion says, Tinkers don't go to the mainland. And Tinkerbell is visibly and totally, like, rightfully disappointed and, like, sad about this. And honestly, I was sad too. That's such a weird, like, why is it that only one of your talents does not get to go? There's, like, the amount of objects that they placed on the, like, the toadstools or whatever, it was, like, I want to say at least 8, or maybe I can't count, but I think it was at least 8. So Tinker leaves. She goes back to Tinker's Nook. She sits down at, like, her workplace, her work spot, her little cubicle, but it has no cube. Her desk. She sits down at her desk, and she's, like, a little mopey. And Mary finds her, and she's basically like, who wants to go to the mainland? Who cares about that? There's so much work to be done here. Okay, so I hate this, but she was like, are you a light fairy? Can you bend the sun or whatever? Are you a nature fairy? Nature talent? And Tinker's like, no. Then there's no reason for you to go. And I'm like, ugh. Why would you think that would help me? Be so for real. Tinkerbell is still upset about it when Mary leaves. But then she gets an idea and she's like, okay, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be a tinker anymore. So Tinkerbell goes to her friends and she's like, hey, can you teach me one of your talents, please? And Iridescent is like, no, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think so. But Silvermist, Rosetta, and Fawn, they're like, you know what? Why don't we try it? Let's attempt. First, Tinkerbell works with Silvermist to try and hold a water drop, which is, I like this scene. It's really interesting. Okay, so first Silvermist is like, she's demonstrating. So she picks up her water and she's like, you've heard of a dewdrop? This is a don't drop. And nothing happens. So she goes, that's water fairy humor. And Tinkerbell's just like, yeah, it's very good. And I thought that was very funny. I didn't tell it properly, but you know, it's a good one. Tinkerbell, she watches Silvermist bring her dewdrop up to where she needs it, which is next to like a spider web, I think. And Silvermist is like telling her what to do, and she like lays out her dewdrop on the spider web and spreads it out so it's like multiple now. And then she turns to Tinkerbell and she's like, where's your dewdrop? And Tinkerbell is like, oh, let me go get it. So she tries and picks up the water, and she's holding it, and so she's like flying back, and it pops, and she's like, ugh. And Silvermist is like, shake it off, you can do it. And Tinkerbell, she tries and picks it up again, and it drops again, and she keeps going, and she's getting more and more frustrated, and it is getting more and more apparent that she has anger issues. All the other fairies are just like watching, and they're like, ooh, this is getting hairy. Silvermist is like one of the best and nicest fairies out there. She's like, you know what? I think you can still do it. She's like, maybe if you, but Tinkerbell is not listening, okay? Silvermist is like trying to give her tips, so she's just like, maybe if you, or you know, you could, or blah blah blah, just let me help, or like, you know. And she's like constantly getting cut off by Tinkerbell, her angry like groans or whatever. And she just gets so frustrated that she picks up a water drop and flings it at the what's it called, at the spiderweb. I literally said that like not that long ago. Anyway, so she flings it, and it gathers in the middle of the spider web and kind of pulls it back like a slingshot, and all of the other water droplets just like flow into the center and make one giant water drop, and it flings and hits the other girls, and it's just like, And then Tinkerbell is snapped out of it, and she's like, well, guess that's not my talent. And then Silvermist is like, you know what? You always struck me as a light fairy kind of person. And Iridescent is like, oh. And it's really funny, actually, because Iridescent is the one who didn't want to do this. Then we go into the light fairy action. And Iridescent is like, what can I teach you that would, under her breath, she goes, cause the least amount of damage. And so she comes up with putting a piece of sunlight, like the last light of the day, into a little, what's it called, like a cone, like a little leaf cone, and distributing it to lightning bugs. Tinkerbell's not excelling at that either, so she can't hold the light, so she's trying to reach into the little cup thing, and she can't get it out, so she's like trying to, kind of like dog action, like you take a ball and you throw it and the dog goes after it. She's like putting her hand in the cup, and she's flinging, and the lightning bugs, these lightning bugs, they don't have any lightning, so they're trying to get the lightning, the light. They're trying to get the light because they want to light up in the dark, right? So she's reaching her hand into the cup, she's flinging it, and the bugs are like going to where she flings, but there's nothing there because she can't hold the light. And so she's getting more and more frustrated with this, and Iridescent is like, oh, let me help you out. I could get you started or whatever. And Tinkerbell's like, no, I almost got it. And I'm like, how? she gets so frustrated that she flings the light out, not unlike with the water drop, and it bounces off of a bunch of stuff, and it hits Tinkerbell in the butt. And then her butt is all lit up, and now the bugs are going after her. And so she has to fly away really fast. And I don't exactly like the implications of this. What would they do if they caught up to her? That light is gone. That light is gone. What would you do? What would you do? And I am scared to answer that question, and I'm not going to try. But I'm sure that I was giving it a laugh when I watched it the first time when I was like 6. But let me tell you, I was not laughing when I was watching it this time. So she's like groaning and just like being a bit of a downer because she's down. You know, she's so upset with her talent and everything. And then so she's back in her workspace. Bobble and Clank, they're so content and they're so happy with their job, and they're like, they always say this rhyme that's like, being a tinker is never dull, or something like this, blah 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 blah. And it's super cute and it's so super adorable. And when she first heard it, she was like, oh, that's great. But this time it made her upset. It made her upset, and she was like, I don't want to be a stupid tinker for the rest of my life. And they were obviously and rightfully upset by that. And they just like, they stopped talking because like that's a messed up thing to say to someone who has been nothing but nice to you, and also who is supposed to be a friend, and is a tinker. And then she goes, I didn't mean that you guys were like, I don't understand how you were gonna spin that, sweetie, but you need to stop. You need to stop spinning it. Stop. She ends up leaving because she has offended two of the, like, well, actually, I think those are her only friends in there other than Mary at this point. So she has lost 2/3 of her friends in her own village, I guess I could say, because, you know, Tinker Nook, you know, in her little nook. So she leaves. And she goes to Fawn to see if she can become a nature talent. And this one goes just as badly, okay? So Fawn is teaching baby birds how to fly. And she does like one, she like helps a baby bird fly right in front of Tinkerbell. And she's like, you know what? Can you help that last one that's in the nest? And the process goes, smile, establish trust, and then just like show them how to do it and blah, 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 that kind of thing. She is like, I could do this. So she turns around real fast, like gets all up in the bird's face, and she's like, hi, you want to do some flappy flap today? And it's like really, really frightening from the bird's angle. So this bird is so comical, okay? So she scares the life out of this bird. This just barely born bird. Like so barely born that the egg is still in the, you know, the like eggshell is still in the nest. And so she scares him so badly that he decides to rebuild his egg around himself. So she starts trying to literally pull him out of the egg. And she's so frustrated. She's like having a full-on brawl with this bird. And then the bird bites her. And she's like, ow, okay, sheesh. And so then she sees a bigger bird up in the sky, flying like really well, and she's like, oh, maybe that bird could help us. And so she like starts flying up toward it, and she's like, hey, up there, can you help? And people are looking on in horror, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's a hawk. So they blow a horn and blah 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 blah, and Tinkerbell starts flying away frantically because she's like, oh, I'm gonna die. Then there's like a whole chase scene where she everybody's hiding. She ends up in the same hiding place as Vidya, and Vidya almost falls to her death because it so happened that the hawk was after Tinkerbell, and she went into that spot. Vidya is like, oh, this is my hiding spot. And then she sees that the hawk is right behind Tinkerbell, and she's like, oh, but you can have it. And so Vidya takes the back end out of the hiding spot, so she slides down, and like almost right in between the feet of the hawk, when Tinkerbell is like about to get eaten by the hawk, she goes down the same way that Vidya went down. And Vidya is like stopping herself in the door at this point, so she doesn't like fall out right in front of the hawk. But you know, when Tinkerbell comes down, she knocks her right out. And so the hawk is about to eat Vidya, but everybody comes and like throws acorns and stuff at her, like, boo, tomato, 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 right? And so the hawk flies away. Everybody's like, yeah. But then then Vidya is covered in some, like, I don't know, colors, like from fruits and whatever they were throwing. I don't know. Tinkerbell's like, oh, let me help you, blah, blah, blah. And Vidya's like, I don't want your help, blah, 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 blah. You should stop trying to help. Vidya flies away, and Tinkerbell's all like, I'm useless. And then she flies away. And again, she finds a secluded spot where there's a lost thing. And she repairs this lost thing. We as the viewers know that it's a music box because we've seen it. We've seen that kind of thing before. But they're like, what is this? Wow. She's like fixing this thing up. And all the girls are watching her from behind like a bush. So Rosetta, Iridessa, Silver Mist, Fawn, all of them are watching. When she finally fixes it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Like, so they come out from behind this bush or whatever that they were behind, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. This is where Tinkerbell starts to get a little bit toxic. So they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, this is amazing, isn't this what you love, or blah 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 blah. And Rosetta's like, girl, I think this is your talent, like, this is, don't you love to do this? And Tinkerbell's like, are you giving up on me? Are you not gonna help me anymore? And Rosetta's like, girl, I don't, like, what am I supposed to do? You can't switch talents. Like, what? It's like a type of magic. You can't just switch your type of magic. They all try to convince her that she should stick with tinkering because it's, like, really cool. And she goes, y'all are fake. So she gives them the cold shoulder, and they all fly off. Desperate to find another talent other than tinkering, Tinkerbell decides to go to Vidya, the one person who hates her, pretty much, and does not have great intentions with her, ever. So far, at least. You know, would have let her die if it was up to her with the hawk, you know. Just has an attitude with her the entire time. Didn't give her a chance. Already was like, you are a peasant, and I am awesome. You know, that sort of thing. So, I don't know why she went to her, but she did. And Vidya slams the door in her face. But then Tinkerbell's like, all my friends have given up on me, blah, 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 blah. And Vidya's like, you know what? Let's see what this is about. So she opens the door again. And Tinkerbell's like, can you please teach me to do, like, literally anything of your talent? And she explains the you know, her whole thing. And Vidya's like, you know what? I think I've got something better. It cuts to Tinkerbell trying to psych herself up to catch the sprinting thistles. Apparently, Vidya told her that that was the way that she could get to the mainland, like that she would be respected or whatever. So she, at first, Vidya's like, oh, she's gonna fail. And, you know, duh, because it's Vidya. And then Tinkerbell, like, she pulls out these tools that she made to, like, do it. And Vidya's like, what the heck? So Tinkerbell is actually doing pretty good at first. So she gets 2 into this pen that she set up, or that was already set up. I don't really know the logistics of that. They didn't show that being set up. So it might have been there already, might not have been. I don't know. So she gets them in there, and she closes the gates. And Vidya, as soon as Tinkerbell moves away from that area, Vidya blows the gates open and sets them free. And this, I don't know if this led to it, because it was only 2 in there. But Tinkerbell ends up in a situation where she is watching all these sprinting thistles run down to the main area where all the fairies are. And she's like, oh no. So she runs after them with cheese, because that's, I forgot to mention, she's riding on cheese. She is like running after them. But by the time she gets down there, it's too late. And the sprinting thistles have ruined everything. They have decimated all of the the spring decorations and preparation that they have been working 3 months to procure, okay? And all the girls are like, this has gone too far. Like, what? what happened? And Queen Clarion comes out at this point, and she's like, how did this happen? And Tinkerbell starts walking forward, and she's like, it was me. I'm so sorry. The council, including the queen, has to figure out what to do, because they've spent 3 months preparing for this. They don't have any backup plans, and they don't know how to redo all the stuff that they've been preparing in like the time that they have. And the time that they have is like the next day. The next day is when they have to go to the mainland and spread all the spring cheer. The council is talking, and someone was like, couldn't we just prolong winter? And then somebody else is like, and put my winter fairies back to work? No way. And then somebody else is like, hasn't this happened before? Can't we just blah, blah, blah? And somebody was like, yes, it has happened. You ever heard of the Ice Age? And that made me laugh. That made me chuckle. Anyways, Tinkerbell is in her woe is me self-pity era. So she goes to the fairy dust tree. And which is, I think it's like right above the council meeting, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, she goes there where all the pixie dust is at, and she's like picking up some pixie dust, and the fairy dust keeper, he sees her. So she tells him that she's leaving, and he's like, oh, for how long? And she goes, oh, forever. He's like, oh, well then I better give you a lot, cause forever's a long time. And she's like, thanks, Terrence. And he's like, you know my name? And then she goes, of course I know your name. Why wouldn't I? And then he's like, well, I'm just, I'm not that important. My job's not all that important. And then she goes, what do you mean? If you weren't here, no one would have magic. And this is your talent. You should be proud of it. The camera pans so that you can see him like grinning. That's the word. And then he's like, I am. She does this look that lets you know like she's thinking about it. She's like, oh, I gotta go. And then she goes off by herself and finds the lost things that Mary confiscated and gets an idea. So the queen basically says that spring can't go on, like it cannot commence on time. And Tinkerbell interrupts yet again with inventions to fix the mess. And the queen's like, you know what? I don't know about this one, because the last time. And then Tinkerbell's like, just hear me out. And so Tinkerbell, she calls out this random lady in the crowd, and she's like, you! How long does it take you to paint a ladybug? And ladybugs are painted in this universe, which is so interesting, with a base coat and polka dots and everything. Anyway, so she's like, how long does it take you to paint a ladybug? And she's like, I don't know, 15 minutes. And that is wild. That is such a wild figure. Okay. So Tinkerbell, she's like, let me demonstrate. And she takes the little invention she's got in her hand, and she spray paints this ladybug. This ladybug is shivering for its life, because it's like, oh my gosh, this lady is crazy. She's gonna mess up my paint job. And so Tinkerbell, she like spray paints this ladybug, and then she like does like automatic polka dots with like some blueberries or something. I don't know how paint works there, but that would not stay. I'm just telling you now, that would not stay. But anyways, it's a kids movie, so we're just gonna let it go. They make all their paints from berries, so I'm sure it's fine. Everybody's like, whoa, that was so fast. And she's like, and we can tinker and do all this stuff faster together, and we can get it done in no time. I messed it up, but I'll fix it. And then Vidya's like, are we really gonna listen to her? She's the one who messed it all up. And then Tinkerbell's like, at least I'm trying to help. Have you ever helped anybody? And Vidya's like, I tried to help you. I should have told you to go after the hawk instead of the sprinting thistles. And then everybody hears that. But what I'm talking about is everybody skips over the fact that she just told Tinkerbell that she should have sent her to her death. Vidya just said that she should have sent Tinkerbell to her death. And nobody bat an eye about that. But then Queen Clarion was like, so apparently Tinkerbell was not the only one responsible. And then she sent she sends Vidya to go gather up all the sprinting thistles because they're all still out and about. And Vidya's like, that could take forever. And Queen Clarion's like, well, you better get started. But they get to work immediately, and there's a montage of them making, like, Tinkerbell making things and, like, constructing little contraptions and showing people how to use them, making, like, paint instantly with, well, not instantly, like, but, like, significantly faster. And they're all, like, gathering the acorns and blah, blah, blah. And they're doing it in record time. And so they end up actually getting done. And Mary, she's an organized person. So she's like counting all this up on that little counter. I don't know what it's called, but it's like a square with a bunch of beads and like the lines. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so she's like counting it all up, and her face is like more and more, she's just smiling. She just smiles more and more as the montage goes by. And, you know, eventually they get it all done. And when they're all finished with like making their remaking their preparations, Fawn or Iridessa asks Queen Clarion if Tinkerbell can go with them to the mainland, and Tinkerbell's like, you know what? No, it's okay. It's okay. My work is here. And I'm like, no, you just ruined everything. Like, I'm not going to discount the fact that you made it better, but you just ruined everything because you were so determined to go to the mainland. There is nothing that changed. I'm sorry. It is a weird way to say yes. Iridessa and Tinkerbell are like, well, you should, I mean, but you did all that work. You should be able to go. And Tinkerbell is like, well, but I got all this work here. And then Mary interrupts, and she brings out the music box, and she's like, I won't hear any of that. You're going. And because somebody is missing their lost thing or blah, 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 blah. And she's like, well, how will I know whose it is? And Queen Clarion again goes, you'll know. And I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense. There's a montage of them flying to the mainland, which is just like England or something, and they spread all this the spring stuff. So they plant fruits and flowers, and they melt all the snow, and like they bring the sun rays to a specific spot and whatever. At the end of all that, when Tinkerbell's just watching them do all this, and at the end of all that, Tinkerbell goes to find the person who is missing this music box, and she's just looking in the windows of every apartment. She's just looking through apartment windows, and she sees one that is just a room with a bunch of stuff, and nothing really stuck out in this room that would scream, at least to me, oh, this person would have a music box. There's a bunch of interesting stuff in there, I guess. So maybe to Tinkerbell it was oh, that's a cool place. Maybe this is it. But she leaves the music box on the window, and she hides behind the chimney of a one of the apartments in front of the window, and she waits for the owner to come out and find it. So this little girl comes out, and she opens the window, and I was worried because she put it on the window ledge, right? And I was like, she's gonna open the windows outward, and it's gonna fall and break it. You know what I mean? It's gonna fall and break. But thank goodness these windows were inward opening. So this girl opens the windows, and she sees it, and she's like, oh my gosh. And she's inspecting it, and she's like, oh my gosh. So she pulls out this necklace, this chain she's got around her neck, and it's got a key on it. So she turns the key in the lock of the music box, and it starts to play, and she's like, yay. So she's like, mom, guess what just happened, in a British accent. Okay, she's like, mom, guess what just happened? And then her mom's like, what is it, Wendy? And that's when the music ended. The movie ended. And then what's it called, Fly to Your Heart, sung by Selena Gomez, played. There was so many so many hard-hitting celebrities just involved with this. It was so interesting. But yeah, I really like this movie. I think it holds up. Like, if they were to, the animation wasn't too bad, but if they were to like put like a little Encanto's rendering on it and release it today, I feel like kids would still love it just as much. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think about this video. I appreciate it, and you'll catch me later. I am British now, and I am Wendy. Also, why was Wendy British?